Dandy sets and searching tools. All right, so you've seen this before. There's now about 400 Dandy sets in the archive, different species, different sizes, different electrophysiology. We've got really high-value data sets like that from IBL, from Microns, many from the Allen Institute. But how do you search across all the other ones? Because there's like hundreds of them. You can't possibly read all of these descriptions. So I'm going to go through in order of difficulty the different search tools, okay? So number one is the search bar. Number two is filtered search and a SQL interface. Number three is semantic search. And number four is API-based. I would expect like most of you to be able to use the search bar, and then the remaining most of them to be able to use filtered, and then the so on and so forth. So choose the level of difficulty that you need. Okay, so the first thing is just the search bar, and that's really simple. And you can get pretty far with this. So you could say, I'm interested in working memory, right? And then you can just type in working memory, and here are 6 results. So that's a reasonable number to just kind of read through the descriptions, open a NeuroSift, see what's in there, and then maybe that's the best way for you to work, right? That's perfectly fine. Not very sophisticated, but if you don't need to be sophisticated, then that's fine. It's a simple word matching search, right? So there's no like semantic meaning. Like this can, there are gotchas here, right? So if you type hippocampus, you get 52 results. But if you type hippocamp, you get 81. Why? Because a lot of them say hippocampal, right? So that's where you get into trouble with the word matching. So you gotta be tricky, you gotta understand how, but you guys are familiar with this kind of thing through Google. You can be crafty with your searches and you can get quite far. Okay, the next type is filtering and sorting for Dandy sets. Now this, I'll admit, is a prototype just recently developed, but we were like, hey, we've got all this metadata, let's actually provide structured search over it. So we have a link here that you can apply filters. So here are 678 Dandy sets, but let's filter by species and say I only want ones that are zebrafish. Okay, well now that filters it down to 23 Dandy sets. Okay, so this is a bit more structured. Now, of course, you could just type zebrafish in search and you'd probably get similar results. But here there's been a bit of work done in like homogenizing the data. Like sometimes people will express species slightly differently, and we've done our best to kind of aggregate over those. And then also we have different anatomical structures. I'll admit anatomy is not as well annotated as it could be, but to the extent that we have it in the metadata, it's exposed here. Approach and measurement are pretty similar, but they're just extracted from the metadata. File formats, you might be interested in other types of file formats. Data standards, you can look at like what are the BIDS data sets, what are the OME data sets. Most of them are NWB. Variable and measured, this refers to specific neurodata types within NWB. So you have to kind of be familiar with those neurodata types. If you're interested in a specific type of recording, that you might be able to identify that with a specific neurodata type. So for instance, like if you're interested in specifically eye stuff, then you might want pupil tracking. So let's do pupil. So there's no zebrafish with pupil tracking, which is good, actually. I'm glad that's confirmed. But let's see, if you had mouse pupil tracking, there are 9, right? Okay, so this gives you an idea. Now, there might be false negatives here, right? There might be data sets that didn't properly annotate. They have people tracking, they didn't properly annotate it, and so it won't show up in the search. But anyway, this I think is very powerful in combination with the free-form search, so you can kind of, a lot of you are gonna like use a combination of these approaches. Now, this website also has this SQL interface. Now, SQL, so basically the way that we did this faceted search is that we took all the metadata in Dandy and we ingested it into a SQL database, and then we're just exposing filters of that SQL database graphically here, but then you can write your own SQL queries. So if you type help, you can look at all the SQL tables available. There's like dozens of them. But I have some example queries on here. Now, I suspect most of you are not that familiar with SQL. So here are some example queries that kind of show you how it's done. So here's one, find DANDI sets with many files. Okay, so I'm going to load this in. And SQL, while you may not be familiar with it, like reading it is not that bad. It's like actually a pretty simple language. So you might be able to look at this, understand it, and see how you might want to make modifications to it. You can execute this query, and then, so basically what this does is it finds all DANDI sets and lists their ID, their name, the asset count, which they're calling file count. And they're doing this by merging basically assets with the DANDI sets they correspond with. And then they're ordering it by the file count, and they're showing the top 20. That's what this query means. And so here you go. The DANDI set with the most is this one, DANDI set 571. So that's an example. And there are a few example queries here that you can play around with if that's useful for you. Okay, the next is, this is really an experimental thing that I've been working on, but I wanted to show you guys because I think it's really cool. So using SQL, the SQL interface in agentic mode. So I don't have a graphical user interface for this. I'm actually using, so I exposed a tool in with an interface called MCP, which is basically wraps it in a way that allows an LLM agent to call this tool. And then it can operate in a loop. So it will call the tool and then reason about the response, and then perhaps do another command, reason about the response, perhaps do another command, reason about the response, and then come up with an answer in the end. So let me show you what that looks like. I was experimenting with another model that isn't as good. So I'm going to go back to my normal open router. Okay, this should work.
Ben, can you make that bigger?
I can try. Yeah, I can. All right. It's kind of not, maybe that's better. All right, I'm going to start a new chat. So probably a lot of you aren't that familiar with this. I'm going to go into this interface and how it all fits together on day 3 in the coding with LLMs, but I just wanted to show you a quick demo to get you excited about this. So I've created an MCP server, which I've put here, this DANDI query server. And through this, hopefully this will work, can type in, oh, here's a good one. What is the electrophysiology DANDI set with the most sessions? This was asked by someone yesterday. I forget who, but I tested it on this to see if it could do that. Okay, so let me stop the auto because it's just going a little too fast. All right, so what's happening first is I send this up to the LLM. It's like ChatGPT. I'm using Anthropic's Claude Sonnet because it works a little better with tool calling. So it's understanding what it needs to do. It says, oh, look, I have this MCP server that can help me answer this question. The first thing it does is it calls get schema, which gives it all of the tables and all the columns of all the tables. Okay, then it reasons about that, and it crafts a query that it thinks is going to work. So let's try this. So this is the SQL query that it's going to send up. And there's a response. So it's going to reason about the response and then do another query. And then this was incorrect, so it needs to correct it. It needs to see what it's getting more information by querying these tables. It's seeing what information is in these databases, and it's using that to shape subsequent queries. This is going to fail because it's not allowed to start with. So it's going to realize that and do a select command. So this is iterating through kind of similar to how a person would. And it's reasoning about these responses and continuing to hone its search to find the right search for this question. All right, I think this is the one. It's getting into a weird place, I think. But I think it's going to find its way. It's trying queries, looking at the response, and then creating a new query based on that response. I've never seen it get this stuck. I don't know what's going on. All right. Okay, task completed. But it's not correct. All right. Well, yeah, I could. I mean, that is the kind of thing I would do here, but I mean, I probably would just run a new one. But anyway, this is a framework we're working on where an agent can interact with the SQL database and try to reason about it on its own. Usually it's right. I don't know what happened here. I'll have to dig into this. It's a work in progress. Okay. So that you can prototype that here. If you're interested in trying to run this agentic mode locally, I can help you set that up. Okay, so then there's another approach that's also LLM based, but it's a different type of way of using LLMs, and it's called semantic search. So here, essentially, we take all of the metadata associated with each DANDI set, and we encode that as a vector using LLMs, using this process called semantic embedding. And then when you create a query, it can vectorize that query and then find the closest vector in the among the DANDI sets that you've computed. So the nice thing about this is it's not it won't trip up if you have this like hippocampus situation, right? Because it's not based on actual words. It's based on the semantic meaning of the content. So Jeremy Maglin put together a search interface. So you can do basic search, which is essentially the same as the DANDI search bar. But if you go here into semantic search, then you can say something like, I want a DANDI set that where I can study reach tuning, reach direction tuning in monkeys. And then boom, calcium imaging of motor cortex during arm reaching tasks. That seems pretty relevant. All of these are great. Neural population dynamics during reaching, marmoset electrophysiology and kinematics during prey capture, 2-photon calcium imaging. Well, the first three are great. So there you go. So that's one other way. This is a really, yeah.
Sorry, I have a question. I mean, what it's doing is, if I understood correctly, like codifying
Right.
That query
Yeah.
to a vector.
That's right.
And comparing it simply with the vector that would correspond to each.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I mean, wouldn't saying in this particular case, wouldn't saying something like I want a.
That would make it. It would. Yep. Yeah, it would. But it works anyway. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You might do better if you just say reach direction tuning in monkeys. But and actually, yeah, this is better. But it kind of just works, even if you don't hyper specify it. But yeah, I would say this is probably a better query. Yeah. Yeah, good point. Okay, so that is that example. Thank you for pointing that out. And then there's yet another way of searching, and this is a new type that was also developed by Jeremy, where it's kind of similar to the SQL approach that I showed, except instead of writing SQL queries, it writes code that can process DANDI sets automatically. So this is a bit more capable of doing complex things. So here you could ask it what DANDI set has the most sessions and submit this, and then it will go through processing. And here it's actually writing and executing code. The agent is writing and executing code to answer this question. And then, yeah. this is not right. The brain-wide map does not have 100 sessions. So we're working on these tools, which is why we have a large variety. That's the thing. The agents are like magic, like if they work. And it's embarrassing. Usually they work. I don't know what's going on. I think I'm going to have a strong words with Sonnet later. But anyway, this is the danger of agents. So it also kind of shows you like, but you just try it. If you have something really specific, it might be worthwhile trying. And also this index is not just DANDI, but also OpenNeuro and eBrains. So actually, like I tried this earlier. So I did, long time scale oscillations in the MEC. So there's a specific data set produced by the Moser lab that's in eBrains that studies long timescale oscillations in the MEC. So I'm going to see if it can find that, and I'm also going to see if it can find any other data sets that are relevant. So it's first searched DANDI, and it's found some interesting ones. This one in particular, routing of hippocampal ripples. Okay, it's looked in OpenNeuro, and it's found some interesting things. But this is neuroimaging stuff. This is like MEG, which is a bit outside the scope of what we're working on, but it could be interesting. Now it's searching. Okay, so this it particularly liked recordings from medial entorhinal cortex during linear track and open exploration, which seems like a great one. These three do look great. So it's saying 100 NWB files. I'm guessing that's because when Jeremy wrote this, he's prototyping it and he only put in 100 NWB files per DANDI set just to speed things up. But I can tell it, what about eBrains? So this is an example of how you can talk to these agents, not like computers. Like you can just talk to them like a colleague, and it's it's like you don't have to say also search eBrains. You can just kind of colloquially talk to it, and it did. Okay, so it found the data set submitted by the Moser lab where they specifically looked. Oh, did it? I think so. Anyway, you get the idea. There's a lot you can do applying this to your own projects. Okay, and then finally, I think I'm not going to go too much into details on this because we don't have a ton of time, but you can do advanced search. So there's a REST API that allows you to pull specific DANDI set and asset level metadata from the DANDI Archive. This provides the most flexible, like high-tech solution where you can craft your own queries yourself. We have some notebooks here walking through this, so you can see the list is like examples of identifying relevant DANDI sets through Pythonic processing of the metadata that's being pulled directly from the archive. So this shows you how you would do how you would find all DANDI sets that contain NWB data, and then how you would filter those by a specific species, and then how you would filter those by a specific species and sex. So that's those tutorials, and then if you go to more advanced, this shows you how you would get the average age of a subject used in a DANDI set. That's pretty advanced because it means parsing the age field. Count the number of spiking units across all sessions in an experiment. This shows you how you would do that. So essentially here we're saying, well, one of the more advanced things you can do is take this metadata and like process it and filter based on the process metadata, because the age is not, it's like a string, and you have to convert that to an actual value in order to take the average. And then here we've got, here we have calculating the number of spiking units across all sessions. There you actually have to open the file up, right? It's not just the metadata. You actually have to look at the length of the units table to get the number of units. So here we're showing how you can iteratively load each file using REM files, load up that file, figure out the length of that array, and then use that as the number of units. So these are more advanced things some of you may find useful. I'm happy to, you can just kind of follow this yourself. I'm happy to answer questions if you need this. Again, I wanted to mention example notebooks are a really great thing. If you're not really sure what kind of thing you want to do, I highly recommend going with IBL, going with OpenScope, or looking through these example notebooks where you can see code that you can just kick off from. So this shows you how to read the data and generate reasonable visualizations for each of the data streams. And then finally, if you're trying to use a DANDI set and there's some issue with it, if there's key metadata that's missing or clearly incorrect, or if you really needed raw or processed data and it's missing, or if you can't understand the stimulus or the task, then all of these are really good reasons to open an issue about this DANDI set. And the way to do that is here in this discussions forum. So you can see if you can filter this by DANDI set issues, and we have a number of issues per DANDI set. This is our way of tracking issues on DANDI sets. They're not done in a way that's linked explicitly to the DANDI set, so you have to just use the title to say which DANDI set you're talking about. But it's our way of tracking this until we have a way of doing this in a more streamlined way, just so we can keep track of any issues. So you would just say new discussion, and then following the template of the examples that are already there, tell us about the issue you're having. Okay, that's all I've got. Any questions?